Good morning, good morning. All right, so we are at the appendix, well, the appendices of Prophecy Key to the Future. And these are the ones that I guess are not exactly in the timeline, or that he wanted at the back because maybe they were more controversial or need more explanation. Kind of hard to say. So the first one is actually really short, and the next is kind of long. So we'll see if we can fit them both together, or we'll just do one. First one is Appendix 1. The United States Constitution will hang by a thread. To me, when I was reading about this earlier, it sounded like Joseph Smith was talking about there were going to be fights inside the United States, city versus city kind of thing at best. And what I mean by that is just more or less mobocracy. And when that time comes, there'll be invasions on the west and east coast, and then everyone who has run to the mountains for refuge will disseminate from here to beat back the invaders. And it's not really the Constitution, it's more or less that the country will hang by a thread. And then later prophets turned it into the Constitution. That's what it read like to me. But let's see what this appendix has to say. This work contains prophecies concerning 2 times when the United States Constitution will be in danger of failing. Well, that's interesting. Chapter 1 tells of the prophecies of the Third World War, in which the United States and its Constitution will be in danger of collapse. In that chapter, prophecies are recorded that the elders of Israel will provide the balance of power which will preserve the liberty of this nation and the integrity of its guiding document. Chapters 4 and 5 tell of a second period of great stress in which the United States government and its Constitution will again be challenged. In the internal wars, the nation and the state governments of the nation will collapse and dissolve. Law and order will be preserved only by the saints in the tops of the mountains. They will maintain the Constitution and continue to follow its principles. In both of the periods of war, it is anticipated that the Constitution will be in jeopardy and will hang by a thread. In addition to the comments by general authorities pertaining to the saving of the Constitution, which were cited in Chapter 5, the following statements are also recorded. So before I get to the quotes, okay, I can see how the book divided that. I don't know. I think, to me, it seemed like the original one was Joseph Smith talking about wars, and then, the problem is that, I don't know, when we sit there and think about the Constitution hanging by a thread, it's used so politically, constantly, of, vote for me, the Constitution is hanging by the thread, and it's like, is it really? I mean, what does that mean? How would you know that it's hanging as if it were by a thread? Like, to me, the phrase means that it would be in dire jeopardy. Well, there are so many different times in the history of the world that we can see that it's been hanging by a thread, depending on how broad or narrow you want your definition. For example, I took a class on business ethics, and one of the speakers dived into our different alphabet agencies that we have, and he basically said, look, if you want something that is one of the most egregious breaches of how the government should work, it's these agencies where the Congress gets to sit there and just say, pass these good laws and figure it out for us and send it to them. So they've abdicated their debating body to make rules. They just say, we will make a good law and hand it off to such and such alphabet agency who then regulates things into oblivion. And because of that, you are how that court system is on its own compared to other court systems is, again, egregious. And so you have really the actual governing bodies are not in the representatives, but are instead in these alphabet agencies. That's egregiously wrong. And there's a lot of other things that have transpired that really have changed the landscape of what the country looks like. We do not resemble what the country was before 1911, probably, around then. I'm pretty sure Glenn Beck has a bunch of stuff talking about the changes that were made under Woodrow Wilson and other things. And the reason I choose that date has a lot to do with the central banking authority, the Fed. And the reason why is because slowly but surely its power was built up because it had been instituted at times and taken away, and now it has been instituted and not taken away. There's just all sorts of things that's step by step, and especially during FDR, he's the one who had 4 terms. There were so many things during World War II that were just astonishing. The FDR really, really, really liked central authority and planning. It was like the soup du jour of the time when, politically, that everything was centralized government and had to be centralized focused. They really appreciated Mussolini. And so they instituted all these things that were extremely, extremely nearly socialist. Like the only difference between like places like Mussolini and us was the fact that we had the democratically, well, the people kept electing their leaders. And even that, it was rough. There's a lot of stuff I learned in that business class just through history and some of the speakers that were there, and I was astonished. So you could call that hanging by a thread because of how much, and since then, how much the government has changed. But again, how broad or narrow is your category? On the other hand, if you look at how it describes these scenarios that are extreme in their they're very extreme in their pressure on the people and politically as well, that you basically get a point where it's much easier to abandon the principles of the Constitution, to have people do a different type of government just because, for expediency's sake. That is really hanging by a thread or near abandonment. When I sit here and think of emergency situations, even I have to sit there and go, look, if you want expedient government to get things done, it'd be things like abandoning whatever you have as a republic and going to a central authoritarian rule. This is like Caesar, and I know it's bad, but it's really extremely rough. And so, yeah, I have to sit here and think, all right, how do you, with how much things have been messed up and added to and globbed on like cancer and corrupted over time like fungus that has happened to our form of government, when do you call it hanging by a thread? You could say it's practically all the time, or you could say it's going to be specifically when people are willing to abandon the Constitution because it ain't working anymore. It's just too slow, too corrupt, too many issues, not enough trust. Like, frankly, there's a lot of that I've seen recently in politics where I'm just like, are you kidding me? The people that the constituents elect to be on the ballot is overshadowed just because somebody goes out with more money to get signatures, and because of their name recognition, they get the seat. Not because everyone who was a delegate decided, wait, this is a good idea. This person upholds the values and will actually, provide stability in the government. No. It's about money, and it's about name recognition. That's what it is. That's what it is. Oh, how do we change that? Oh, we have to probably get everyone in our state elective government to repeal something that's been around for 8, 9, 10 years now. It's horrific. It really is horrific. But how do you govern people when they don't want to be governed? And how do you govern people when they're willing to, like, I don't know, because I've had that cynicism streak thrown in me politically. I'm just one of these people that are like, okay, we'll see. I would love for that to be the standard. I would love to have a people that are willing to live that standard and get rid of the excess and the corruption and the rubber stamping and the non-thinking and just everything else about it. But, I have grand ideas of what happens if I get involved. Wouldn't it be nice if I were there? It's like, you think I can affect change in a real, meaningful manner? I would like to. I really would. I would like a group of people who just had good standards, who were willing to absolutely rip out terrible, terrible stuff from top to bottom, and especially at the local level. But, oh well. That's a different thing. So, let's see what Brigham Young has to say about what does it mean to hang by a thread. Brigham Young attributed the hang by a thread statement to the prophet. Quote, "Will the Constitution be destroyed? No. It will be held inviolate by his people. And as Joseph Smith said, the time will come when the destiny of the nation will hang upon a single thread." See, the destiny of the nation, and to me that was when they were fighting. "At that critical juncture, this people will step forth and save it from the threatened destruction. And it will be so." Journal of Discourses 715. That's the one where I'm talking about, that it's going to be talking about wars. He also referred to it on another occasion. "Brethren and sisters, our friends wish to know our feelings towards the government. Answer, they are first rate. And we will prove it too, as you will see if you only live long enough, for that we will live to prove it is certain. And when the Constitution of the United States hangs, as it were, upon a single thread, they will have to call our Mormon elders to save it from utter destruction, and they will step forth and do it." Journal of Discourses 2:182. It was President Young who asserted that the United States flag will fly when the kingdom of God bears rule. Quote, "When the day comes in which the kingdom of God will bear rule, the flag of the United States will proudly flutter unsullied on the flagstaff of liberty and equal rights, without a spot to sully its fair surface. The glorious flag our fathers have bequeathed to us will then be unfurled to the breeze by those who have power to hoist it aloft and defend its sanctity." Journal of Discourses 2:317. Elder Orson Hyde taught that the church will never want to be free of the Constitution of this nation. Yeah, I would agree, as long as it was the pure Constitution, as it was intended to be. Read Skousen's 5,000 Year Leap. You want to have, if we are so steeped in the stupid analogy of the boiling frog. We are so steeped in hot water right now compared to what it used to be. And look, what it used to be was never pretty either. Like, I'm going to be very honest with that. When you think of all the different presidents of the United States that have ever been elected, there have been some that have been extremely popular. And what's funny is how much history has done them dirty, because the history has been written by activists. And it's not even the victor, it's activists. Because if it was written by the victors, a lot of these presidents that we shovel heaps of crap on would have a lot better reputation. But instead, you get armchair philosophers hundreds of years later just looking back and condemning all those people who lived in their time and dealt with the problems they had to deal with. It's incredible. Practically one thing that hopefully all of America could agree on is that George Washington was truly, divinely appointed and inspired to be there for the founding of the country. Like, this guy was incredible. George Washington is amazing, and there's a movie coming out this 4th of July for the 250th anniversary of the founding of the nation. It's called Young George Washington. It looks really promising. So I really, I'm looking forward to it. Let me put it that way. But at the same time, you look at all these other presidents, there's a reason they were elected. There's a reason that they had really big majorities of why they were elected. Now, you can hate on them all you want, but go back and look. Some of those most popular presidents are now hated by historians. So after George Washington, it just started having problems. Like, George Washington warned against factions in his parting speech, and immediately we have that. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson went after each other like cats and dogs, and we have problems with central authority versus uncentralized authority. We have problems with, the Civil War and slavery that we had to get over. And then even after that, how do you keep the country together for the generation or two subsequent to that? And it's a crapshoot. And like I said, with the coming of centralized authority, because specifically how it was written, the Constitution was along the lines of all the rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution should be left to the states. Meaning, if we didn't write it down, it does not mean the central government has that. That got reversed. Then it was later argued that, well, it doesn't say we can't. No, really, there's a clause that basically says anything that's not enumerated in here that's specifically given to the central government should be retained by the states. But no, Supreme Court, precedents, things like that, precedents should really govern the people. Because, if the president isn't doing what all the bureaucrats want, then surely the judiciary can correct things and strike down everything that he does. It's just, the checks and balances are out of whack. The authority that the president has is out of whack. The authority that the Congress should have is out of whack. It's all super crazy. Like, when he says that we will hold it up, I want to. But I want it as it was originally. I want it as it was intended. Read Skousen's 5,000-Year Leap. Just read the Constitution as it was originally written. I understand. I'm not sitting here saying that anyone who makes the argument that I'm advocating for going back to what it was like in the 1800s, no. I understand that we've obviously gotten rid of slavery since then. I'm not advocating going back to crap like that. I'm talking about the pure Constitution, where Congress actually is Congress, the ones who actually make the laws, who don't just get to make sound bites, raise money, go home for the day, and live fat off the taxpayers, and, do stock trading and business deals, and then when their time is done in Congress, they go be a consultant for these companies and live grandiose lives because they get to just have this incestuous cycle of going in Congress, out of Congress. And it's just ridiculous. I would love for the incentive to be that you want to have people who respect the ideas and rights of the people, not line their pockets, to serve the people. But power conglomerates in such a way that it's like, oh, well, who determines the salary for Congress? Well, Congress does. Oh, okay. Anyways, you see, I'm sorry. I'm pretty bitter and cynical about this. It's like, this is why there's how do you get rid of all that and have people who just, hey, let us be good representatives of the people. Let us stand up for what is right and make choice. Like, just gut the whole darn thing down to the absolute bare minimum. Anyway. So, where is it hanging like a thread? How broad or narrow is your definition? All right. Elder Orson Hyde taught that the church will never want to be free of the Constitution of this nation. You may afflict, you may pass laws, you may call upon distant nations to help you, you may shut down the immigration against Latter-day Saints, you may drive them, you may burn their houses, you may do all this, but they will continue to live and to stretch forth in spite of all the powers beneath the heavens and become a great people under the Constitution of the great land. We never want to be freed from the Constitution of our country. It is built upon heavenly principles. It is established as firm as the rock of ages. And when those that abuse it shall molder in corruption under the surface of the earth, the American Constitution will stand, and no people can destroy it because God raised it by our ancient fathers and inspired them to frame that sacred instrument. The Constitution is one thing. Corrupt politicians are another thing. One may be bright as the sun at noonday, the other as corrupt as hell itself. That is the difference. Journal of Discourses 2431. See also Doctrine and Covenants 101, 77 through 80. He's exactly right. I certainly agree. If we lived by the principles of the Constitution, man, would that be nice. George Q. Cannon taught that the saints will be the ones who will sustain the Constitution when liberty cannot be found elsewhere. That will be important. Even if there are things in my local area I don't like, if we actually still adhere to the principles of the Constitution, even if there is crap that I don't like compared to everywhere else, if they abandon it, I will absolutely appreciate it. This is true. We came here to stay here. George Buchanan, we came here to stay. Here we expect to stay, and here we shall stay as long as we do it, as long as we do right. And we shall not only stay here, but we shall spread abroad, and the day will come, and this is another prediction of Joseph Smith's, I want to remind you of it, my brethren and sisters, when good government, constitutional government liberty, will be found among the Latter-day Saints, and it will be sought for in vain elsewhere, when the Constitution of this land and Republican government and institutions will be upheld by this people, who are now so oppressed, and whose destruction is now sought so diligently, the day will come when the Constitution and free government under it will be sustained and preserved by this people. This is saying a great deal, but it is not saying any more than is said concerning the growth of this work, and that which is already accomplished. Journal of Discourses 23:104. He also said, quote, it seems like a strange thing to say, but on all proper occasions I say it with a great deal of pleasure, at home and from home, that I have been taught from early life that the day would come when republican institutions would be in danger in this nation and upon this continent, when in fact the republic would be so rent asunder by factions that there would be no stable government outside of Latter-day Saints, and that it is their destiny as a people to uphold constitutional government upon this land. Now, a great many people think this is a chimera of the brain. They think it is folly to indulge in such an idea. But the day will come, nevertheless. There are those in this congregation who will witness the time that the maintenance of true constitutional government upon this continent will be dependent upon this people, when it will have to be upheld by us. Journal of Discourses 23, 122 through 23. Elder Moses Thatcher said that although the Constitution may have been torn to shreds, the saints will tie it together again. I will say, when this nation, having sown to the wind, reaps the whirlwind, when brother takes up sword against brother, when the father contends against son, the son against father, when he who will not take up his sword against his neighbor must needs flee to Zion for safety, then I would say to my friends, come to Utah, for the judgments of God, commencing at the house of the Lord, will have passed away, and Utah, undisturbed, will be the most delightful place in all the Union. When war and desolation and bloodshed, when the ripping up of society come upon the nation, I have said to such, come to Utah, and we will divide our morsel of food with you. We will divide our clothing with you, and we will offer you protection. I will tell you, my brethren and sisters, that the day will come, and it is not far distant, when he who will not take up his sword against his neighbor will have to flee to Zion for safety. And it is presupposed in this prediction that Zion will have power to give them protection. We are not going to do it outside of the government either. We are going to do it inside the government. There is no power in the land to turn this people against the government of the United States. They will maintain the Constitution of this country, inviolate, and although it may have been torn to shreds, they will tie it together again and maintain every principle of it, holding it up to the downtrodden of every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, and they will do it too under the stars and stripes. Journal of Discourses 26, 334. I don't know. I would hope. I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I would hope. Like I said, I have a cynical streak because of what I've seen, and because of the festering of these politicians under the corruption that has occurred since its inception. And so, but yet I truly do think it's probably the best way to govern people. The only problem is that there needs to be more guards about keeping the principles as they were originally intended. It would take people of honor. But the problem is the beast is so huge. Like the apparatus of lobbyists, businesses, and the festering pile of laws that have just accumulated to obfuscate people in their desires. Like, Utah is one of the more egregious states with occupation certification. I think for most services, this is an evil. This is an evil because you are forcing people to go to school to get certified for something that doesn't need certification. For example, beautician school. If people are good at it, they're good at it. If they're not and they want to learn, they can go to school and get good at it. If personal businesses want certification, fine. But to make it mandatory, this is horrific. There was, in Utah, a specific case at this time, probably a decade and a half ago, where a woman did her own business of braiding people's hair or weaving hair. She was an immigrant from, I think, Africa or something, and she started her own business because she She braided her own kids' hair, she weaved her own kids' hair, and she wanted to do that for others. And they're like, no, you can't do this. You have to go through 2,000 hours of beautician school. Why? Right? Why? This is ridiculous. You are creating a monopoly, an artificial monopoly of protectionism for what? Great clips? For, whatever hair salon is out there? I mean, come on. If those businesses require it of their employees, that's one thing. But to sit there and mandate it on the entire state when someone wants to start their own business, this is egregiously stupid. Okay? So we have our own petty, stupid pile of laws that we really need to oust. I have huge issues with HOAs. I think they're just horrific in so many ways. But this is why I've gone out to, I would love to just, between developers, because it seems like it's instituted by the developers of the land. And then it just becomes a force of leverage against your neighbors. It's just, there's all these petty things, but then there's the really egregious things. Because when you use the government as protectionism for your businesses, this is a bad thing. Oh no, it's all in the name of safety. Really? Like, and then when people in business are corrupt, it's the corrupt politicians and the corrupt business people. It's really, really bad. When you sit there and have the Ford Pinto back in the day, which they knew was bad, and it would cause people to die because the gas tank was on the back and it was easily ruptured and catches cars on fire and explodes. They figured instead of recalling all of the cars that they designed, it was cheaper for them to have people die, pay them off, and then just stop developing them. They just didn't recall it, if I understand right. Now, that's a extremely watered down idea. There's just all sorts of things that just don't make sense, both in business and in government, when you have people that profit is their first motivator. Not service, not product, not doing what is right. It is profit. And that unbridled capitalism can be horrific, because then you have companies doing extremely unethical things, getting people addicted to their products, having truly false advertising to sell their stuff, and duping people into getting it, that kind of stuff, or working in a way to try and make sure that they're protectionist. There's times where I get it, and there are times where I'm like, this is more than ridiculous. And how do you sort through all that? It's a headache. I don't think anyone in their right mind wants to actually go in there to try and fix things. And I think that's why we're at this point. That's why I think I have that cynicism, because I would love for things to be fixed. But to sit there and say, well, I could do it. Yeah, with this one man right here. Send me in and I will correct it all. Really? Really? It would take a group of people, all extremely like-minded, to just tear out the crap that it has accumulated to start with, followed by which we'd need to have a run of many like-minded people in government who would need to then figure out, all right, how do we establish this further than it was originally, that puts guardrails against bad incentives for improper actors to come in, take over, and change things. That's a monumental task. monumental. And anyone who would claim that they could come in and fix it without years of study and work is just, I don't know. This is why it's along the lines of it will look like an ugly duckling if it comes to that. If the world really devolves into the horror that is exemplified here, then okay, yeah, I will gladly be, even with all its warts, under this government. Because, oh, the phrase that I love that my dad always said, you know, this constitutional republic is the worst form of government. It is absolutely horrific and terrible. And the only thing worse than it is all the other types of governments. And so I love that because in many ways it's true. It is very much an ugly duckling because of the festering corruption that has come in. And it's mostly not because of the principles on which it originally lies. It comes because, as this book pointed out, the corruption of people's hearts, the corruption of the public servants' hearts, the businessman's heart, the giant corporate conglomerate heart, the CEOs of these giant companies, their disregard for truth, reason, honor, family. They just have utterly different sets of values, and they try and shove it down people's throats instead of focusing on preserving the purpose of their company, which is to provide goods and services that people want. It's that wielding of grand power that they think they should shove down the throats what they want. Anyway, I think I should end this here, because even though we have the White Horse Prophecy next, it's a bigger chapter and it's wonky, so we will have to spend time on that. Plus political rants are annoying. Yes, I'm cynical of how things are, yet I'm extremely grateful for it at least still being here in the most basic foundations. I'm very grateful for both the nation and Constitution that we have. It has staved off evil and corruption for quite some time. I think more than anything, a restoration of the Constitution of the past is only possible by the people becoming honorable and caring the way it was in the past. And perhaps when there's enough decay elsewhere, we can finally have a group of like-minded people who will stand up in group, in mass, to overtake the government in a way that will bring it back to its senses, that it will do away with all this crap that is unnecessary, and restore it to the idea of preserving people's freedoms, and really truly looking at what is necessary and what is not, and getting rid of the waste, getting rid of corruption, getting rid of sweetheart deals, etc., instead of looking out for the prosperity of certain businesses. They look out for the prosperity of the people. So I'm hopeful because of these prophecies. I'm cynical because what I see. So enjoy, take for that what you want. Most importantly, even when it comes to politics, find out the best way that you can be a righteous person when exercising that political authority, even if it is to simply vote in what limited capacity that we have to try and do what's right. Do your best. Do your best. Even if you shake your head at everything else that's going on, do your best. Do your best. May God be with us all.